In this lecture, we're going to look at tort claims which have been made against the energy majors in relation to their contribution to climate change. These are against the oil majors and other energy producers. They include direct or indirect emitters of greenhouse gases. The first case comes from Germany, and it involves a Peruvian farmer whose land is at risk of flooding, and that risk of flooding can, according to the claimant, be attributed to the climate change due to global warming. So they are suing a German electric power company, the biggest one in Europe, RWE. They're responsible for nearly 0.5% of global CO2 emissions. And what the Peruvian farmer is saying, I want you to give me a 0.5% contribution to the costs of measures I'm going to have to take to protect my house against flooding risk. Seems reasonable to me. Didn't seem so reasonable at first instance to the Landgericht Essen Regional Civil Court, the first instance court, who denied the claim. Climate change is too complicated. We can't attribute specific impacts to individual emitters. And everybody emits greenhouse gases, so no single emitter can be held liable. The Court of Appeals in Ham disagreed, and basically they asked that evidence should be taken through expert opinion with respect to various questions. And I'm just going to show you the questions up on the slides. I'm not going to read through them, but these are various evidential questions which the court felt needed to be addressed through expert opinion, so that you could actually get a handle on the causation issue, which had been the reason for the claim being dismissed. So that's the first question. Second question, it's actually 4 sub-questions to do with the release of CO2 emissions. And this, as you can see, it's an attempt to see whether there is actually a direct causal link between the 0.47% contribution to global warming from RWE and the accelerated melting of the Pacaraju glacier, which is going to then cause the risk of flooding to our poor Mr. Lihuja, who has got the farm just underneath the Pacaraju glacier. That's still ongoing. In the States, there have been a variety of suits. The most notable, I think, one of the first ones is Kivalina versus Exxon. Various Inuit Native Alaskans sued Exxon and various other carbon majors for damages. And they were saying, well, your greenhouse gas emissions from your products have caused eroded sea ice where our village is located, and that's interfering with our life, and you've caused harm to us. Well, in 2009, it went to the federal court, and they said, we don't have jurisdiction over it. This is a political question, which you're raising in your tort claim. This is something which is not appropriate to be decided by a federal trial court. And also, you can't really prove that the people you're suing have actually caused the injuries which you're complaining of. In 2012, there was an appeal to the Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit, which is the California Circuit. And they gave us a different answer. They didn't rely on causation. They didn't rely on the fact that it's political. But they said, you're suing under public nuisance. That has been displaced by the Clean Air Act, which effectively means that it is the exclusive province of the relevant regulatory authorities in the states to determine how the atmosphere is managed. So preemption by the Clean Air Act. So that's actually going to produce a big block for bringing claims of public nuisance in the federal courts, but there is also the state courts. Now, if you sue in the state courts, you're not going to have all this difficulty about preemption by the Clean Air Act. That's something which is only going to be a problem if you're suing in the federal courts. It's an American thing. Difference between states and the federation of states and the federal system. So if you bring a claim in the state courts, you've got a better chance of at least getting it heard. But the defendants, the oil majors you're suing, will want that case to be kicked up into the federal courts. And when it's in the federal courts, they will say, sorry, preempted by the Clean Air Act. And that's exactly the sort of battle which we've been seeing in some of the bits of litigation. There have been two big jurisdictional wins for the oil majors. There's the case which New York, the city of New York, brought against Exxon, and the Californian case, the city of Oakland, against Exxon. Both had decisions against them in 2018. It's quite interesting. In the city of Oakland case, the judge hearing the case actually got a whole lot of climate change experts together and said, you know, give me a tutorial, please, on climate change and global warming. And I think one of the things which is different is that the evidence to link certain adverse weather changes with man-made CO2 emissions, anthropogenic CO2 emissions, the science on that has developed substantially since 2009. And actually, I think you can now prove that certain weather events, such as the increased risk of flooding in the REW case, and the increased risk of flooding, particularly future flooding in New York and the city of Oakland, which is going to lead to increased costs to mitigate that on the part of the public authorities. And that's the nature of the claim which they're bringing. You know, you're admitting all this, or at least your products are emitting all this CO2. This is causing global warming. Sea levels are rising. We're going to have floods. It's going to cost us in flood defense measures. We want damages from you.